It was a humid morning in May 2025 when Ibrahim Traoré, president of Burkina Faso, received an unusual call at his presidential palace in Ouagadougou. His communications director, Yacouba Sawadogo, was on the line with an excited tone. "Mr. President, CNN has invited you to participate in a live international debate. The topic is democracy and leadership in the 21st century." Ibrahim, at 35, had become accustomed to international attention since his rise to power. But this felt different, overlooking the bustling streets of the capital. Several world leaders, but the main counterpart will be Congressman Jim Jordan from the United States. He specifically requested to debate with you about governance and accountability. Ibrahim raised an eyebrow. Jim Jordan, the 60-year-old Republican congressman from Ohio, was known for his aggressive questioning style and conservative stance. He had recently made headlines criticizing young African leaders as inexperienced and unstable. He requested, "To debate with me specifically." Ibrahim asked, "Yes, sir." He's been quite vocal about questioning the legitimacy of military-backed governments in Africa. It seems he wants to challenge you directly on international television. Jordan clearly didn't know who he was dealing with. "Accept the invitation," he said firmly. "Schedule it for next week and make sure our economic and social development data is ready." Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., Jim Jordan was in his congressional office reviewing notes about African politics. His aide, Sarah Mitchell, was briefing him on Ibrahim Traoré's background. "Congressman, this young president has actually achieved significant results in Burkina Faso. His approval ratings are above 80%. Jordan waved dismissively. "Sarah, he's just another military strongman. These African leaders are all the same. They make promises they can't keep." The news of the upcoming CNN debate spread quickly across international media. In Ouagadougou, Cabinet was working intensively to prepare their president for what promised to be a significant diplomatic moment. Dr. Alonso Ouedraogo, the foreign minister, on our governance improvements. "Since 2022, we've reduced corruption by 67%, implemented transparent budget processes, and established independent oversight committees." Ibrahim nodded, reviewing the documents. "What about our democratic credentials? We've held 3 transparent municipal elections, all monitored by international observers. Voter turnout averaged 89%, one of the highest in West Africa. We've also established a constitutional review committee with civil society participation in Washington." Jim Jordan was preparing differently. He focused on what he saw as weaknesses in Ibrahim's rise to power. "He came to power through a military coup," Jordan told his staff. "That's all I need to discredit him." His communications director, Mark Stevens, looked concerned. "Congressman, his popularity is genuine. Even international observers acknowledge his democratic reforms. They care about strong American leadership, challenging weak foreign leaders." Back in Burkina Faso, Ibrahim was meeting with youth leaders from across the country. At 22, Aminata Kabir, a university student, asked him directly, "Mr. President, this American congressman seems to think we're not capable of self-governance. How will you respond? And the truth about what we've accomplished together, let our results speak for themselves." His wife Ajara joined him that evening as he practiced his talking points. When you know you're right, confidence comes naturally. The debate was scheduled for May 20th, 2025, at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, broadcast live globally. CNN promoted it as a clash of generations, American experience versus African innovation. The network had promoted the debate as a landmark event. East meets West, traditional American politics versus new African leadership. From his presidential office with the Burkina Faso flag prominently displayed behind him, "Mr. President," said Yacouba Sawadogo, "global viewership projections show over 50 million people will watch this debate live." Ibrahim adjusted his navy blue suit, the same one he wore during his famous response to Vice President Harris months earlier. "Good. The world needs to see what new African leadership looks like." Reviewing his attack strategy, he planned to question Ibrahim's democratic legitimacy, his age, and his military background. "This kid won't know what hit him," Jordan told his aide confidently. The debate format was simple. 90 minutes of direct dialogue, moderated by CNN's Anderson Cooper. No prepared statements, just real-time questions and responses. At 7:45 p.m. Eastern, both leaders were connected via satellite. Anderson Cooper introduced them. Tonight, we have Congressman Jim Jordan from Ohio and President Ibrahim Traoré from Burkina Faso. Jordan immediately went on the offensive. Anderson, I have to question why we're giving a platform to someone who took power through a military coup. This isn't democratic leadership. Ibrahim remained calm, his voice steady. Perhaps you could explain to our global audience why your own country has one of the lowest voter turnout rates in the developed world. The question caught Jordan off guard. Ibrahim continued, You question my democratic credentials while representing a system where less than 60% of eligible voters participate in presidential elections. Look, the American system has been working for 250 years, Jordan said defensively. Ibrahim leaned forward slightly, his eyes focused directly on the camera. Congressman Jordan, you mentioned 250 years of American democracy. That's impressive. But let me ask you something. In those 250 years, how many times has your Congress achieved an approval rating above 80%? Jordan shifted uncomfortably. Well, approval ratings don't tell the whole story. You're right, they don't, Ibrahim interrupted smoothly. So, let's talk about results. Since taking office, we've built 847 new schools, reduced child mortality by 31%, and eliminated corruption in government contracts. What specific legislation have you personally authored that has had measurable, positive impact on American lives? The question hung in the air, Jordan stammered. I've been a strong advocate for fiscal responsibility. That's not what I asked, Ibrahim pressed. You've been in Congress for 17 years. Surely you have concrete achievements to share. Anderson Cooper watched as Jordan's confidence evaporated. Well, I've been very active in oversight, Jordan began. Oversight is important, Ibrahim agreed. In Burkina Faso, we established independent oversight committees that have recovered over $2 billion in misappropriated funds. We publish our budget online quarterly, and citizens can track every expense. Does the American Congress offer this level of transparency? More complex or less accountable? You criticize my rise to power, but I've subjected myself to public scrutiny through 3 municipal elections. When was your last competitive election, Congressman? Jordan's last 3 elections had been won with margins of over 30 points in a heavily gerrymandered district. It's different, Jordan protested weakly. Is it? Ibrahim smiled. You represent a district drawn specifically to ensure your victory while questioning leaders who faced genuine electoral competition. This seems contradictory. Across social media, reactions were immediate. This African president is destroying Jim Jordan with facts. Jordan got called out by someone who actually knows governance. The humiliation was just beginning. Jim Jordan attempted to regain control of the debate by changing tactics. Look, President Traoré, the real issue here is stability. Africa has a history of military coups and instability. How can Americans trust leaders who come from that background? Ibrahim's response was swift and devastating. Congressman, you mentioned stability. Burkina Faso has had 0 political violence since I took office. Can you say the same about the United States? Jordan looked confused. What do you mean? Multiple mass shootings and unprecedented political division. Meanwhile, Burkina Faso has maintained peace while fighting terrorism and building infrastructure. The statistics were brutal, Ibrahim continued. You question my military background, but I've never sent soldiers to die in foreign wars based on false intelligence. I've never authorized drone strikes that killed civilians. My military experience has been used to protect my people, not to destabilize other nations. Jordan's face wrined. That's not a fair comparison, isn't it? Ibrahim pressed. You criticize African leadership while your own country has been at war for 20 of the last 30 years. Anderson Cooper could see Jordan was struggling. Congressman, would you like to address President Traoré's points about American foreign policy? No, we're getting to the heart of the matter, Ibrahim replied. You question my qualifications to lead based on prejudice and stereotypes, not facts. I must be less capable than older Western politicians, but the evidence suggests otherwise. Ibrahim gestured to documents off camera. My administration has achieved a 96% school enrollment rate. Congressman Jordan didn't know. I'd have to look that up, he admitted. It's 87%, Ibrahim said immediately. A country you consider less developed has higher educational achievement than your own constituency. Perhaps the question isn't whether I'm qualified to lead, but whether you are. The live audience in CNN studio was stunned. Social media exploded with reactions. Ibrahim Traoré is giving Jim Jordan a masterclass in governance. This is what happens when preparation meets arrogance. Jordan had no response. Desperate to regain momentum, Jim Jordan attempted one final attack. President Traoré, you talk about achievements, but you're running a poor country in Africa. The average income in Burkina Faso is still very low compared to America. Ibrahim nodded thoughtfully. You're absolutely right, Congressman. We are still developing economically. But let me ask you this. What's the median income in your district? Jordan hesitated. Well, it varies. It's $54,000 per year, Ibrahim said immediately. Now, here's the interesting part. In your 17 years in Congress, median income in your district has increased by 12%, adjusted for inflation. The math was devastating, Ibrahim continued. So, while our absolute numbers are lower, our rate of improvement is nearly 4 times faster than yours. If current trends continue, we'll achieve middle-income status within a decade. Can you say your constituents are 4 times better off than they were 17 years ago? Jordan was speechless. We've implemented universal health care, free education through university, and guaranteed housing for all citizens. These aren't promises, they're realities. What equivalent programs have you delivered for your constituents? Anderson Cooper watched Jordan's confidence completely collapse. The congressman who had built his career on aggressive questioning was now being systematically dismantled by superior preparation and genuine achievements. America has different challenges, Jordan said weakly. Indeed it does, Ibrahim agreed. But leadership means solving problems, not just complaining about them. You've had 17 years to address your constituents' needs. I've had 3 years to address mine. Our results speak for themselves. The social media reaction was immediate and brutal. Jim Jordan just got schooled by a master. This is what happens when you bring rhetoric to a facts fight. Ibrahim Traoré is showing what real leadership looks like. Jordan tried one last desperate move. But you're not democratically elected. Actually, I am, Ibrahim replied calmly. Unlike your gerrymandered district, our municipal elections are contested by multiple parties in fairly drawn constituencies. Our voter turnout is higher, our oversight is stronger, and our results are measurable. By every democratic metric that matters, Burkina Faso is performing better than your district. The humiliation was complete. As the debate ended, the global reaction was swift and unanimous. Social media platforms exploded with commentary, and chugging Traoré destroys Jordan began trending worldwide within minutes. CNN's own post-debate analysis was telling. Anderson Cooper began, I've moderated hundreds of political debates, but I've rarely seen such a complete dismantling of one participant's arguments. President Traoré, while Congressman Jordan relied on assumptions and stereotypes, political analysts across the spectrum were forced to acknowledge what they had witnessed. Dr. Sarah Williams, a Georgetown University professor of international relations, tweeted, This wasn't a debate, this was a masterclass in governance, by Ibrahim Traoré. Jordan was completely outmatched. Conservative commentator Tucker Carlson, typically supportive of Jordan, admitted on his show, Look, I agree with Jim Jordan on most issues, but he got destroyed tonight. This African president knew his stuff, and Jim didn't. In Ohio, Jordan's own constituents were watching in amazement. Local news stations reported that many viewers were impressed by Traoré's command of facts and, I voted for Jordan, but that African president made him look like an amateur, said Mike Thompson, a farmer from Jordan's district. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell issued a carefully worded statement. While we support robust debate on international issues, we believe American leaders should be well prepared when representing our country on global platforms. The international reaction was even more dramatic. European leaders who had been skeptical of African governance were forced to reconsider their positions. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz tweeted, President Traoré's performance tonight demonstrates the emergence of a new generation of African leadership. Germany looks forward to stronger partnerships. French President Emmanuel Macron was more direct. Ibrahim Traoré has shown that leadership is about results, not rhetoric. France respects leaders who deliver for their people. In Africa, the reaction was euphoric. University students across the continent organized viewing parties, and many changed their social media profiles to include Burkina Faso flag emojis. In the 48 hours following the debate, the political landscape had shifted dramatically. Jim Jordan faced intense pressure from within his own party. Republican strategists privately acknowledged that his performance had been a disaster for the party's international credibility. "Jordan made us look unprepared and prejudiced," complained one GOP consultant. "He went up against someone who actually knows how to govern, and it showed." Back in Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traoré was dealing with a very different kind of pressure: international acclaim. His phone hadn't stopped ringing with invitations from world leaders, universities, and international organizations. The World Bank called to discuss expanding their partnership. Harvard University invited him to deliver the commencement address. Ibrahim remained focused on his primary responsibilities. "Schedule them carefully. Our first priority is still governing Burkina Faso effectively." In Washington, the political fallout continued. President Trump, while not directly criticizing Jordan, made it clear that future international debates would require better preparation. "Our representatives need to be ready when they go on the world stage," he said during a press briefing. Kamala Harris, still recovering from her own diplomatic incident with Traoré months earlier, declined to comment publicly. However, sources: African leader formidable debate skills. The American media was forced to grapple with uncomfortable questions about their own assumptions. Washington Post columnist David Ignatius wrote, "The Ibrahim Traoré phenomenon forces us to confront our biases about African leadership." CNN's international viewership numbers told the story. The debate had been watched by over 60 million people globally, making it one of the most watched political programs in the network's history. Among American viewers, the number was even higher at 76%. 1 month after the debate, Ibrahim Traoré found himself in New York City, addressing the United Nations General Assembly. The invitation had come directly from Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who wanted to showcase new models of effective governance. "Distinguished delegates," he began, "I stand before you not as someone who seeks to lecture about democracy, but as someone who has tried to live it." He avoided mentioning the debate with Jordan, focusing instead on the future of international cooperation. "The world doesn't need more rhetoric about democracy," he said. "It needs more demonstration of democratic results." The response was overwhelming. Delegates from every continent approached him. Afterward, seeking partnerships and advice, the president of Ghana, Nana Akufo-Addo, summarized the sentiment: "Ibrahim, you've changed how the world sees African leadership. We're all grateful." Meanwhile, Jim Jordan was experiencing a very different reality. His approval ratings in Ohio, local newspapers were calling for him to step down from his leadership positions. The Toledo Blade editorial board wrote, "Congressman Jordan's embarrassing performance against President Traoré has damaged Ohio's reputation. Our state deserves better representation." Republican primary challenges were already emerging for the 2026 election. Sarah Henderson, a former Ohio state senator, announced her candidacy with a direct reference to the debate. "Ohio needs representatives who can hold their own on the world stage, not ones who get humiliated by foreign leaders." The contrast couldn't have been starker. Conservative talk show host Ben Shapiro, usually a Jordan supporter, captured the mood. "Look, Jordan. He got outclassed by someone who actually knows how to govern." The long-term implications were becoming clear. American political observers were forced to acknowledge that the global balance of leadership was shifting. Young, competent leaders from developing nations were challenging the assumption that Western politicians were automatically superior. Dr. Joseph Nye, the Harvard professor who coined the term soft power, wrote in Foreign Affairs, the Traoré, "Competence and results are becoming more important than age and geography." 6 months after the debate that had changed everything, Ibrahim Traoré was back in his office in Ouagadougou, but the world around him had transformed. Burkina Faso had become a destination for international delegations, seeking to understand the Traoré model of governance. On his desk were partnership agreements with 15 countries, invitations to speak at major universities, and a Time magazine cover featuring him as Person of the Year. "It's surreal," he told his wife Ajara, as they walked through the presidential. Now they're studying our governance model in their universities. The results spoke for themselves. Foreign direct investment had increased by 400%. 3 new international airports were under construction. The literacy rate had reached 94% higher than some developed nations. Most importantly, approval ratings for his government remained above 85%. In Washington, the political landscape had shifted permanently. Jim Jordan had lost his primary election by a margin of 18 points, the largest primary defeat of an incumbent congressman in Ohio history. His replacement, Sarah Henderson, had campaigned on a platform of competent representation and international respect. The broader implications were clear. American politicians could no longer assume that their positions automatically granted them credibility on the world stage. Preparation, results, and genuine achievement had become the new currency of international respect. President Trump, ever the pragmatist, had quietly reached out to Ibrahim through diplomatic channels. "We need to learn from what works," he told. The invitation for a state visit to Washington was extended and accepted. CNN's Anderson Cooper, reflecting on the debate during his year-end special, captured the moment's significance. It announced the arrival of a new generation of global leaders who compete on competence, not connections. For Ibrahim, the success brought both opportunities and responsibilities. As he prepared for bed on a quiet evening in Ouagadougou, he reflected on the journey. But he never forgot his core mission, serving the people of Burkina Faso with dignity, transparency, and results. The debate with Jim Jordan had been a moment about changing global power dynamics and the rise of competent leadership, regardless of geography.